Hello, and welcome to another episode of SCP Cafe. This is the recap show for 2019, Week 9. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, Tottenham Hotspur supporter, heavy thing lifter. God, all this crap I'm getting in for the cafe store. I own a heat press now. This thing is large. It's every bit of 60 pounds and pulls like over 15 amps. And if you're not electrically inclined, that's about as much as what a whole room will normally be rated for, like on a circuit breaker. So that was fun. I'm still figuring that out. But yeah, the store is coming along very rapidly. I am looking to launch it next week, and we have pretty much the full assortment of things ready to go, either in hand or I will be able to take pre-orders in the case of our soft enamel pins. I'm still waiting on those. Have a pre-order date, my release date that I have scheduled for April the 12th, I believe, and got all the equipment for shirts. I got a ton of shirts in. I'm sitting on a pile of not sitting on. But I own now about 80 different shirts, different colors, sizes, men's, women's, really nice poly cotton blends, and 100% cotton for these nice military green shirts. And yeah, all going to be coming very, very soon. Got some accessories for the badges. Going to have some pictures up on scp.cafe of a couple of the new items that I have been able to successfully create. Really, I'm excited, man. I've been working my ass off trying to get this thing put together, and I hope when you see it, you're gonna, it's gonna be stuff that people like and that you want to do, because, not only because I'm hoping that it's successful for personal reasons, but because it does support the wiki. 5% of all sales are going to Project Foundation. Anything you buy that is that has an artist associated with it. Like I have a lot of Sunny Clockwork vinyl decals and even t-shirts if you want to go that route. Anything that you purchase supports the artist directly. I pay them 15% of gross profit. They don't have to do a thing aside from telling me where to send the money. So there's I think a lot to like with the cafe store's business model. And hoping you will check it out when I give it the green light next week. We have 5 skips for week 9 out of 23 that were in scope. This is coming out a day late, and I apologize. My whole family was sick. I was sick. The dog was sick. The dog being sick was really problematic because when he's sick, I don't function. I laid on the floor with him all night, and had an old memory foam topper that we just kind of tossed on the floor and spent the night there together, and I got about 3 hours of sleep. So the show yesterday was sadly not happening, and then today got busy in the first half of the day, so this is getting out late. I apologize. Try to do better next time. Still getting over a bit of a cold. I'm not sure what the heck it was, actually. I don't think it was a real cold, but I've been congested for a few days, and we have nothing growing yet. It's the desert. So when things do decide that they want to start growing, they go for it. I mean, all these, all the pollen kicks in all at the same time. That's happening next month. So let's see, week 13, week 14 podcast. I'm probably going to sound like hell because my allergies are at their absolute worst in April. Have a few things still coming up. We have JamCon that will be starting in a week, and I have kind of figured out how I want to go about that. We're going to let JamCon just sort of ride, and when it ends, when we end the voting on, I believe it's April 1st, I will go and pick the top 6, the winner and the runner-up out of all 3 contests, and we will cover those. So good, bad, or indifferent. If you end up with a winner or a runner-up in JamCon, we will be going over your work. So it's a little different. Normally, I will pick entries on other criteria, but I think that's the best way to go about it for JamCon, because there are going to be so many entries, and I cannot honestly commit the time to reading all, potentially, I'm going to guess there's going to be 200 in 6 days. That's my estimate. Um, because I mean we did what 120 in 3, so and we're notably larger since then. So I suspect it's going to be a heck of a thing. Meanwhile, IntCon also going on, the international contest where we are sort of sharing GOIs across all of the international branches, and one of those entries is covered today. So we're going to get into it. SCP-3816. This is called Blue Light. It was written by Tupac Official, who I think now that's 2 in 2 weeks. We have an object class of safe and an image of what looks like a big telescope and in the middle of a forest, and it says SCP-3816. I say in the middle of the forest. It's not really. You've got some trees in the foreground, and just open blue skies in the back. So we have procedures that basically say that the skip is to remain at its original location, and the public is to be informed that it is a non-anomalous telescope. And due to the security hazard that it poses, entrance to the skip is restricted to level 3 personnel, and we are proposing reconnaissance on GOIs and other antagonistic entities pending O5 approval. And the description indicates that it is the Large Sky Area Multi-Object Fiber Spectroscopic Telescope, and it is acronymed down to LAMOST, L-A-M-O-S-T. Located in Jianglong Station Observatory, Hebei Province, People's Republic of China. And the skip provides a seemingly omnipresent bird's eye field of view capable of being maneuvered to areas and scales that appear physically impossible from the telescope's dimensions. And time does not elapse in the field of view provided by the skip, and instead shows the same particular point in time as when the object was first used by that viewer. Interesting. And movement of its field of view gradually speeds up to improbably high speeds when used, most likely to facilitate convenient use of its large range. And also, in addition to all that, when viewed through the skip, all sapient organic organisms take on a luminescent blue coloration, which is present through walls and other physical barriers, and this includes other non-human anomalous forms of life. On the lower right corner of the object field of view, a counter notes the number of sapient organisms currently inside the field of view. And that wraps up our description. We go straight from here to addendums with test logs. So we have not attempted to address anything about where the hell did this come from, why is it anomalous, who built it. That is maybe there was maybe some opportunity there to go into that sort of thing, because the rest of the article doesn't touch it. And I think even even a vague answer to that is better than none, because the none is like, well, this is a gigantic fucking telescope. I mean, it's probably 200 feet tall. Surely somebody had to be involved in the build. We would have been able to do some basic due diligence on it. In any event, we have testing logs that show that we begin testing from 50 meters away from the telescope, and we find our researcher that is the target emitting a luminescent blue glow, and the counter is 1, and we back it up to 500 meters, no change, and then we try the same researcher in their hotel room in Beijing 115 kilometers away, and still spot them emitting a luminescent blue glow. So we begin backing this thing out, and we target Site 29 in South Korea, and we've got numerous figures glowing through the walls, and a counter of 523. We go to Site 91 in Smolensk, Russia, and that works. We have a counter of 491, and Site 67 located in Canada. That's over 10,000 kilometers away, and we have 681. And then we target all of Beijing, China. Smog obscures the city, and due to a large number of sapient organisms in view, blue luminescence appears as a confluent mass surrounding the city above this scale, and our counter reads 26,102,681. And then we zoom it all the way out to China. It's worth noting this thing is on the ground, and somehow, some way, the eye of this thing manages to back all the way out to see China. And so it does, with a counter that reads 1,691,731,620. And we back it all the way out to view the entire planet Earth. And we zoom it out until you can see the entire eastern hemisphere of Earth. And at this point, the skip appears to bypass the Earth itself, perceiving all individuals on the western hemisphere as well, allowing the skip to identify all sapient life forms on Earth as of 12:26 p.m. Central Standard Time on April 9th, 2019. Pretty interesting. The Earth itself appears as a confluent sphere of blue luminescence. We have a counter 7,810,295,827. Now, where it gets interesting is we keep zooming out. We go to 0.25 AU, 1.1, where Mercury and Venus become visible. The counter doesn't change. We keep backing out. We back out to the entirety of the solar system. Our counter doesn't change. We back out to 1 light year. Our counter doesn't change. We back out to 4.5 light years to Proxima Centauri being visible. Our counter doesn't change. Back out again, 105 light years. Our counter doesn't change. We back out 11,000 light years, so the entire Orion arm of the Milky Way becomes visible. Our counter doesn't change. We back out to 55,000 light years, so the entire Milky Way becomes visible. Our counter doesn't change. We back out again and again and again. We end this with SCP-3816 zooming out until the camera is 5.5 times 10 to the 9th light years from Earth, and our counter has not changed. And testing with the skip is to continue indefinitely until additional sapient organisms are located. End article. So we didn't address a lot of things that are potentially doing this a disservice, even if the answers aren't all that relevant to the work. Providing them is more expected than not, and the not providing it is distracting. So that said, it's a cool gimmick, and it's one that I'm surprised we haven't that I haven't seen before. I think I sort of hinted at something like that, but I never really made it into a skip in a tale that I did a while back. But I like it. You know, it's simple. It doesn't fuck around. It gets to the point. You've got a neat thing. My one thing I'm thinking about is the object class being safe. This clearly has beneficial potential for the Foundation, and we apparently have enough oversight into this thing to run testing across multiple days. This should probably be a Thaumiel object. We haven't figured out anything really beyond this basic anomaly, and perhaps that's something that we could have done something with in the article as well, because we have the neat thing that does a thing, but there's very little, there's no conflict, there's no no real pacing to go with here outside of the basic. The counter's going up until we see the whole planet, and then doesn't increase beyond that. So we were kind of, I know as I was reading this, I was expecting at some point we would see the counter go up. And it's like, ooh, there's our punch. We've got, we're not alone. We finally answered this question. But we don't. And instead, we just keep zooming out until sapient organisms are located. And that's interesting, particularly given the universe that this happens in, this Foundation universe, where so many things happen from outside of the planet Earth. So many, extraterrestrial things. And for that matter, it's pretty canonically consistent that we have a moon base. Like, we probably should have had the counter go up when the moon became visible, but it didn't. So this is also, slightly at odds with accepted canon with regards to the Foundation. But for what it is, it does it pretty well. I like the work, and I think it's a worthwhile addition. I would like to see a little more done with it. Still a +1 though. Moving on, we have SCP-4684. This is titled Wizard Cops, and it was written by Proasec. There's a couple things you notice immediately on loading this page. One, it's using the new SCP theme, and two, we have a little header, a little block quote at the very top above the rating box that indicates that this article is part of IntCon. So you can upvote it here, but you should also upvote it at SCP Int if you like it and think it is deserving of the if it's deserving to win the thing. There's a lot of good stuff going on, but this was I think the best thing I've seen so far out of IntCon. and that uses a GOI out of the German branch called the Mages Academy. So the first thing that you see, we have an image of a pretty nice looking, fairly professional looking building, 3 stories or 4 stories tall, and the caption reads Munich headquarters of SCP-4684, and an object classification of Thaumiel with a footnote that reads uncontained. So interesting classification. I don't think I've seen that combination before of an uncontained Thaumiel object that still has an SCP designation. We have procedures that indicate that all facilities owned and operated by our SCIP are to be monitored by Foundation-operated observation posts, and the Foundation is not to directly interfere with these facilities unless it is in accordance with the Munich Agreement. Interesting. Groupings of -1 and -2 personnel are to be internally listed as detachments of Special Task Force Omega-21 and given the same access, rights, and freedoms as a standard MTF of similar composition. So this is apparently a SCIP that we are working with on a close enough level to entrust them with the same sorts of rights that we would give our own MTFs. And the Foundation Department of Thaumaturgy is to designate a certain number of staff to a facility owned and operated jointly by the Foundation and the SCIP for the purpose of developing new thaumaturgic workings and equipment for use by both organizations. So we are in deep with the SCIP. We have archived containment procedures whereby the object class was Keter, and we go into how we have been tracking all the facilities and people involved in 4684 instead. We have a description that indicates that 4684 is a paranatural law enforcement agency operating primarily within Germany and nearby Germanophone countries. And SCP-4684 is closely related to GOI, Black Box, and we have the Mages Academy in parentheses. And this is a link to the SCP-Int Mages Academy hub for the German wiki. This GOI is, the SCIP is assumed to adopt the role of preventing the use of outlawed thaumaturgical practices within the group's membership or in any areas that it considers to be part of its holdings. And currently there are 83 facilities in Germany and surrounding Germanophone countries owned and operated by the SCIP. And the SCIP has at time of writing successfully prevented or contained upwards of, there are 5 black boxes, thaumaturgical workings that would have resulted in highly threatening anomalous entities, and what looks to be 7 black box, so at least 1 million, that would have resulted in the formation of moderate or low threat anomalies. So these guys are absolutely kicking ass and taking names. Agents of 4684, hereafter referred to as the -A, are typically baseline humans, usually in possession of high-grade thaumaturgic capabilities or artifacts. Our -A are typically uniformed in standardized blue suit jackets with a black one-piece bodysuit covering the rest of the body, and about 10% of the agents are -B, who possess no thaumaturgic capabilities and instead work as a clerical role, that they may be either a psychological or paralegal role, or if it's to take advantage of esoteric thaumaturgic workings that rely on a religious basis in order to operate. So we basically got, what was the title? Oh yeah, Wizard Cops. So that's pretty much the size of it, isn't it? And we have an interview log from between a Foundation interviewer, a doctor, and a POI -1 that is conducted in German. It's been translated, which is good news for me. Our interviewee would prefer to be referred to as Sister rather than Miss, and indicates that she works for the Arcane Investigation Special Police Squad. We have a footnote here that says that this name was given in English for reasons that we haven't yet determined. And she indicates that she is part of the clerical staff and serves as a supporting role in the field, and typically this consists of banishment of magical entities or directly enforcing her team's will through prayer. And we indicate some surprise that how forward they are being with the Foundation, And she replies that my organization, as you call it, has been greatly impeded by your interruptions in our work. Tell me, doctor, how many mages do you think are in Germany? And the doctor says, a few hundred? No more than 300 outside your organization. And she replies, doctor, there are over 8,000 mages, the majority of which are of moderate moral standing at the best of times. That's a great line. Our interviewee then says, as you can see, the current situation requires amendment. I would suggest contacting our organization through official means in order to assist in the prevention of paracriminal activity. I believe that would be in your interest as well. And we conclude the interview, and we have our second addendum, which is the Munich Agreement. And what we basically have is a bilateral agreement between this Arcane Investigations Special Police Squad and the SCP Foundation, and it's a little bit of give and take. And this is nicely presented with, who's in attendance and, who are the signing parties for this. And we agree to disband an MTF that's been tracking all of these POI members, and we redistribute those MTF members into the workforce. All sites controlled by us as part of this containment effort are to be returned to this organization. We're to provide expertise and resources where applicable in the field of thaumaturgic combat. We're to avoid impeding their operations, and we're forbidden to impede personnel working for them, either directly or indirectly. And in exchange, they will resume the prevention of paracrime in the areas in which they operate. They're to submit a full list of their locations to us. All personnel working for them are to be cataloged, and we will receive that list. Operations carried out by them are to include a mandatory cover-up operation, and failure to do so will result in increased Foundation oversight, and they are to avoid impeding our operation. And then we have a part for both parties that, with the Foundation's assistance, the group is to establish a thaumaturgic engineering department, and this will benefit both of us. And lastly, that we are to engage in a personnel exchange program in which Foundation thaumaturgy specialists and 4684 agents will gain appropriate skills from the opposite organization. And we go on to say that since the implementation of the Munich Agreement, 4684 has concluded, and we've got 4 black box paracrime cases and 3 black box, of which were directly assisted by the Foundation. End article. This is a nice sort of a linking skip. This sets the stage for letting us use an established GOI from another branch in our wiki. And there's, everything in here is really polished. What we have is a well-conducted interview, and we have this moment where we don't know half of what's going on in an area that we have significant oversight, or that we should, and we have underestimated a fairly important number here, the number of thaumaturgically capable mages in Germany. And not only have we underestimated, we've underestimated them by over a factor of 20. That's not a good look for the Foundation, and I think it's that gives the push, the impetus for working with these guys, and possibly also because we at this point have seen them work, and we've seen them contain a huge number of thaumaturgical events with to say with no help would be an understatement, because we're actively sort of muddying the waters. So the agreement makes sense, and I like what the work does from a just from a wiki perspective, that we are able to kind of pick up the ball and run with it when it comes to this GOI. And I think that was part of the point of IntCon, is let's introduce these, sort of homegrown GOIs with the other wikis. And this is a really good way to go about that. We've got a GOI that is shown to be, they're being built up pretty strong here, which is good, and we can use that going forward. That's the point of this, and this is a really well done implementation of it. So very easy, +1 from me. Moving on, we have SCP-4749. This is titled Demoniacal Paper Towel Dispenser, and it was written by Mac Warren. And what we have is, first thing you see is a widescreen image of a bloody wall with something very dark at the kind of top center that covers most of the width of it. Blood running all down the wall, and it says Figure 1.2, SCP-4749's effect on its environment. Blood on the walls match no known species on Earth. So that's suitably ominous. We also have an object class of Euclid. And procedures that indicate that the Northrop Hotel has been purchased by the Foundation, with all employee positions operated by undercover Foundation agents. And we have a struck through a couple of sentences here, and what struck through reads, the men's restroom of the second floor is to be closed off to the public and locked up, citing sanitary issues as the reasoning. No other containment procedures are necessary. What we have now says, update, the men's restroom of the second floor has been sealed off with concrete in a new segment of the wall taking the restroom door's place. So they basically walled up the door to the men's room. And personnel are to ignore any sounds or noises that may emanate from the wall, and are to remain observant of any unusual vermin, large holes, and foul-smelling odors, and report these to the HMCL supervisor. So moderately ominous procedures, and along with the image, but it's not immediately clear where we're going with this until we get to the first line of the description, which reads, SCP-4749 refers to an N-Motion brand paper towel dispenser located in the men's restroom on the second floor of the Northrop Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the primary anomalous property of the skip is that it has a seemingly infinite amount of paper towels. Sheets removed are non-anomalous and do not appear to have any other function other than to dry hands. Its second anomalous property is the effect that occurs in its environment when the towel sheets are pulled. When pulled, the restroom will simultaneously begin to degrade in condition depending on the amount of paper towels removed. So as the restroom's form begins to distort, the manifestation of vermin organisms and pests such as rats, cockroaches, and worms will manifest. These animals are also affected by the skip as the entities begin to distort into grotesque and malformed creatures, bearing little to no resemblance to their original forms. And we have a struck through bit here that says, the struck through reads, this effect can be reversed by rolling the paper towel roll back in its place, causing all deterioration within the restroom to gradually disappear, bringing the restroom to its original quality. And there's a footnote here that says that vermin present during this process will also be reversed to their original forms and vacate the restroom by crawling into any holes or openings that may still be present nearby. We have some exploration logs, and as you hit this collapsible for the first log, there's a black and white image that is visible, and I can't tell what's going on, not even a bit. But what it says in the caption is extensive damage to outlet. Oh, I see. It's an electrical outlet, but it's all black and white and weird looking. But caused by pulling over 90 paper towel rolls from 4749. So we go to an exploration log with a D class. This is D22222. They are on site. They begin to pull, and the first paper towel they rip out causes the restroom mirror to crack, and he begins counting as he pulls on paper towels, and the room begins to distort. Lights start to dull and flicker. Tiles fall off. Urinals and toilets start to leak. The mirror's cracks start growing. He's pulled 12 at this point. Keeps pulling, and now the mirror is stained with oxidation and cracks. The walls bleed from the crevices in the tiles as they fall. The wallpaper and ceiling paint starts to bubble and peel, and audible gurgling noises can be heard from the faucet sink. The D-class kind of jerks and reacts, and says there is a large brown puddle touching the back of his shoes. Worms can be seen floating and writhing in it, and it appears the fluid is leaking from the toilet stalls, and the D-class begins to cough and gag. And he's asking what the hell can we get out? He's retching, and command says push the towels back, and he starts to, and as he does, things improve, and we end the experiment. We go into a second log, and keeps going, keeps pulling. He's pulled 50 paper towels, and command says, asks if you see the tile that just fell on the floor, and instructs the D-class to walk over to it, and there appears to be a mass of organic matter in the place of the tile, and The D-Class describes it as looking like flesh or muscle tissue. It's dilating living flesh. Goes back to the dispenser, starts pulling more of them out. Rats begin to swarm the urinals. Cockroaches are crawling out of the sinks. He's pulled 97 paper towels, and the command says, all right, push the roll back now. Our D-Class tries to push the roll back, and nothing happens. It's not working now. I love this twist. This is a great way to execute it. So at this point, he starting to freak out, understandably so. Command says, okay, just get out of there, and attempts to open the door, and it won't open. He continues to twist the knob left and right, pushes the door, pull the door, doesn't work. Our D-Class is officially freaking out, and we're trying to get in from the other side, trying to use a sledgehammer, a fire axe, to no avail. And at that moment, a dark puddle of blood, urine, and fecal matter seeps from the bottom of the door towards the outside to the containment team trying to get in, and we cannot get in. Our D-Class is freaking out. They're sobbing. They're crying. The puddle of urine, blood, and feces has grown considerably larger. There are worms and roaches floating in it, and we lose the connection with our D-Class. And after losing contact, it was presumed that this D-Class perished inside the room. With no way to access it, it was proposed to close off the restroom from the public until further notice. We have a third log, and upon closure of the restroom, it was discovered that the logs from the D-Class were saved and ported to command automatically as part of what looks to be a dead man switch protocol. And these provided a way to listen, but we only get the listening. We can't communicate back to them. And this is basically the D-Class all just sort of talking and rambling to himself. There are, cut himself on accident, said, well, I dipped my hand in the shit, maybe I'll die faster if it gets in my nervous system. Then we go down a little bit. It says, please let me go. I'm already eating a rat. What more do you fucking bastards want from me? Fucking paper towels. And he's, sobbing and kicking and trying, get away from me. And a lot of some pretty disturbing stuff in here. And finally, decides that he did this to himself. D-Class already have that sort of the connotations of a sketchy background, so we're kind of playing on that. And said I shouldn't have pulled it, but I have to keep going. It's the only way out. It's the only way out. So presumably they go back and start trying to pull some more out. We go to a second addendum, and this is an incident that happened on August 7th, 2015. For the record, let's see, how long was this after the first? We don't have a timestamp on this first one, so it's hard to say when exactly how much time has transpired between the two. That's something that I think people need to kind of pay attention to. If you're going to put an incident and you want it to really land and have impact, we need an amount of time that's passed, and you can play with that to get more or less impact for how much time's transpired. If somebody is presumed to be dead and gone, and this happens years, months, years down the road, you can, give that some punch, because like, oh my God, what did they have to go through to have this incident occur? In any event, the incident is that the Foundation agents reported a foul-smelling odor emanating from the storage room in the third-floor kitchen, and upon investigation, it discovered that the scent came from a large hole in the corner of the wall. And we inspect the hole, and that prompted a massive influx of creatures resembling vermin entities to spawn from the hole and overwhelm the kitchen and staff in the second and third floors of the hotel. MTF Lambda 12 Pest Control responded and were quickly dispatched to deal with the threat. These invading vermin appeared to have physical traits and quality similar to that of rats, but grossly misshapen with matted fur and deformed features. Among these was the presence of insectoid legs and antennae, thick segmented tails, human-like hands and faces, and DNA testing revealed a close relation of organisms, and we've got several other scientific orders here with rodents, primates, and during cleanup, one of the creatures had a message carved into its abdomen with a small sharp piece of a ceramic tile. The message is transcribed below, and it's an expandable. You click it, and it reads, "Rot with me in hell." End article. I really like this. This is a nice, creepy piece where we have experimented and made a bad situation worse. Generally, I go for that. I think there's still plenty of ground to cover in the Foundation stepping in it and, making things worse than they needed to be through simple, stupid experiments. In a lot of ways, we're kind of frightfully stupid when it comes to the things that we try to do testing with, and in this case, we've made a bad situation worse, and we respond just by sealing the hole off with concrete, and at that point, that's pretty fucked up because it's you kind of have to make the assumption that our D class may not be as lost as we suspected that they were. It leaves a lot unsaid, and I think that really works to the benefit of the piece, despite my gripes about things like missing timestamps and so on. This is outside of that. We have not explained much, and we haven't gone out of our way. This is always the tough balance to strike, I think, and this is what separates a good work from a really good or a great work, is how much you say and how much you leave up to the imagination. This does a good job of it, and this is an easy +1 for me. Before I go on to the next one, I want to give a special mention to my long boy of the week, SCP-4935 by DJ Cactus. This thing is gigantic and really good, but also totally unsuitable for this recap format. I would spend probably 45 minutes on this joint. It's really long, and it basically takes you into a universe whereby we are looking at an anomaly, a space-time anomaly. We can sort of get connected with a civilization 130,000 years into the future. And this is sort of tied in with Omega K, with the end of death scenario having happened, and sort of posits a potential, I won't say an end game, but definitely late stages of humanity. And it goes after some things that are, very likely in end of death, that in something like a war, even if somebody is exploded by a grenade, what they're left with is a consciousness that is in constant pain for all eternity. And we have some very compelling different factions here. I say factions. They're basically our predecessors far out in the future without the ability to die, that are called the ACOT, or the Grave Diggers, and a scorpion entity trying to gain access by sheer brute strength to a sort of superstructure that is meant to house the sort of last humans, in an effort to kill them in a way that we can maybe finally allow these people to die, because they've been around for quite a long time. It plays with various horrifying existential truths. It does a lot of it very, very well, and builds a very compelling universe. But it is, like I said, quite long, and not really suitable for a recap in this way. If I want to get these, out in any sort of reasonable timeline, I am going to tell you this is very good. At +61, I think it is underrated for the amount of work put in, and highly encourage you to give it a read. SCP-4935 by DJ Cactus. Now, moving on, SCP-4697. This is titled Dropping Off the Kids, and it was written by Roger just a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. We have no image, in fact, no image at all in the work, and an object class of safe, and a very short set of procedures. They read in their entirety. Research and living facilities have been built around SCP-4697, along with a full security perimeter. No access is to be given to non-Foundation entities. Video monitoring has been set up throughout SCP-4697 in order to monitor its activity. Once per week, the exterior parking lot is to be cleared of any refuse which has manifested. And that's it. So we seem to have the situation pretty well handled. A description that indicates that the SCIP is a teaching facility located in northern Ontario, Canada, containing facilities for 525 students and faculty members with classrooms, a library, offices, and an ice hockey rink. And we have a footnote by the ice hockey rink that indicates the ice on this rink keeps itself at a constant freezing temperature and does not require maintenance. That's handy. It was built in 1905, burned down in 1915, and was reconstructed in the same year as a private hospital until 1946. And the interior is basically exactly how it appeared when it was functioning. The floor plan appears to be a little irregular sometimes. Depending on where you are in the building, it alternates between the first and second construction of the building, between the school and the hospital. And what we note that furniture and objects within the building are non-functional. Complex objects such as machines or desks are completely solid and actually have no moving parts. Sound produced is muffled significantly, and subjects have reported frequent metallic scents, smoke, and the general presence of dust and other particulate. There is no functional lighting within the building, and attempts to rig lighting have failed. So it's not really clear why that's failing. Presumably because the interior is anomalous in such a way that we can't really rig lights, or they don't work because there's a lack of facilities, a lack of, say, electrical outlets that actually function. We go on to specify that there are humanoid apparitions wearing garments typically found in the region during the early and mid 20th century, and they manifest quite frequently within the building, and they always appear to show physical symptoms of disease, such as visible pustules and blemished or darkened skin. And we have notable recurring entities, including humanoids resembling the viewer's parents, who move further away as the viewer approaches and eventually disappear. There are reflections in the mirrors in the building, showing the reflected humanoids as young children, significantly thin and pale with a remarked physical decline. And subjects have noted the reflections become animate and will cough, vomit, and shiver. And occasionally faint outlines of men and women believed to be their parents have been noted. The appearance of an apparently infinite room containing apparently endless rows of cots with sick humanoid figures inside. The sounds of young children crying in bathrooms, empty closets, and stairwells. And a large humanoid with the proportions of a child which skated around the ice rink perimeter 6 times while wielding a stick sharpened to resemble a scythe. The reason I picked this thing is because this is a great throwback work. This is building this structure and this ghost story straight out of Series 1 in the best way. There will always be room on the wiki for well-executed, creepy shit. We have addendums that indicate that we fully enacted our containment procedures July 5th, 1976, and after this, we note that additional phenomena have now been documented in the area which was formerly the parking lot for visitors and staff. Excrement, bile, empty glass bottles, and human blood stains have been found across the parking lot, and we request a budget to clean that shit up. And then we find a mass grave containing the remains of 20 adults and 16 adolescents dating from 1918 and 1919. This corresponds to official records detailing deaths at the facility. They were all listed as disease and indicating that bodies had been cremated. We do what we can to disinter, identify, and bury the individuals. And we have contemporary news reports from the time. They indicate that despite numerous instances of child disappearance, it continued to be popular with local parents up until the time where it was shut down. And we update this to say all remains have been buried in marked graves, while genealogical research is done to identify any living family members and allow for a more precise identification of the remains. And at this point, we note a new apparition in the entrance hall, strongly resembling the living father of a subject who perished while attending this building, and we are surveilling this POI. We have an incident after this of a possible burglary. Broken window is noted as the likely means of entry, and we investigate and we perform a full audit of research materials. And after this burglary, we note an uptick in anomalous activity. And we end this with a fourth addendum, an incident on the morning of 9/19/1956. Several intruders were discovered within 4697. They were identified as residents of Toronto, and these individuals were parents and relatives of children who had perished within the building, and our POI was among them. The materials confiscated from them indicated they had been attempting to perform an exorcism, and when interviewed, the subjects were distraught and did not provide useful information. Their homes were searched. We amnesticized them and placed under surveillance. And that's where we end the article. So we have this interesting addendum at the end that is dated from 1956. We start the containment procedures in 1976. I have to admit, the way this is presented is a little confusing. The timeline is unclear as to, like, you do a casual reading of this, and it looks as though we had this burglary, and we didn't timestamp it, but we have an incident later that says this is in 1956, and you go, well, wait a minute, our first addendum was from 1976. So I would say that needs a little bit of attention. Either adjust the dates or make it a little more clear. Maybe shuffle them around. I know you don't want to necessarily shuffle this around if this is your big punch, that this is an exorcism and that we're dealing with, a very sort of traditional demonic presence, this demonic possessed sort of building. But it's enough to give you pause and throw you out of the immersion for a minute. That said, like I said, this is good, straightforward, creepy stuff, and I am all for that on the wiki. I think that is sort of creeping you out is job one here at the SCP Foundation, and Roger did a good job of that here. Doesn't try to answer too many questions, and I know I say that a lot, but it really is keeping the mystery is such an important part of that line between a good and great work. So this does that well, and the descriptions that are present are good and raise the stakes in a nice, suspenseful, visceral way. So those are the reasons why I think this thing is underrated at +11, for that matter. And this, for me, was a very simple, easy +1. Last but not least, SCP-4532. This is titled Wire Transfer, and it was written by Literally Mechanical. And they were on a roll back at the end of last year, beginning of this. They had 2 included in 2 weeks. So happy to see them back on the show again. I have a very specific reason for picking this one, which I will get to towards the end of this. We have no images, again, an object class of Keter, and procedures that indicate that the skip is highly contagious over both radio and electronic communications channels, and computers and devices dedicated to the study of the skip must be stored in Faraday cages and physically isolated from all exterior networks, including the Foundation intranet. Oh, it's an IT skip. Oh, that's right, I'm a huge IT nerd. Oh, that might be why it's here. Any Foundation network found to contain 4532 is to be closely monitored, and detection systems are to be installed at internet broadband hubs for global observation of the skip. At this point, no effective method of neutralizing the skip has been discovered, save for total isolation of clean, in quotes, devices. Research into a filter capable of blocking 4532 communications is underway. Installing such filter on major internet traffic choke points may prove to be logistically infeasible. The top priority for containment research on the skip is focused on halting its continued infiltration of the NASA Deep Space Network. There's a fucking high stakes, as well as any future use of privatized spaceflight firms for the purposes of establishing Earth as a quarantine zone. So we have very serious concerns that we have a viral, contagious skip that has already infiltrated the NASA Deep Space Network. That's going to be problematic, because that includes our super fucking deep space probes, the New Horizons probe, and so on. We describe 4532 as a high-frequency, high-entropy AM signal broadcast on a low-amplitude carrier of roughly 3 terahertz. That is a 3 terahertz signal. To not get too into the weeds, is highly anomalous on its own. The trouble with such a high frequency signal is that it would be almost impossible to detect without being extraordinarily sensitive. And that is basically exactly what the description indicates. This is almost impossible to detect without extremely precise instruments. The skip has been exclusively observed to piggyback, I should say, on man-made electromagnetic communications channels, including radio waves, telephone lines, and broadband internet over copper wiring. These signals are the substance of a sapient distributed intelligence, consisting of a rapidly fluctuating number of sub-instances and copies that merge and divide throughout the internet and radio communications channels. I know this is a lot of fairly dense technical stuff, but what we have is a significant threat. If this thing is able to not only manifest but be contagious in this manner, the fact that it can ride radio waves and copper lines is very, very bad news. Man-made radio waves were very good at making very powerful radio waves that can ride at a low frequency. That is kind of the basis of ham radio, of amateur radios. So we have effectively got global reach on that. So if this is able to somehow sort of ride those high power, low frequency signals with this high frequency signal, that is basically game over for finding a safe spot anywhere on the planet. Outside of the Faraday cage, which they kind of already mentioned. And so anyway, the description of this is quite long and basically makes up the rest of the work. It is, we basically describe that any link between two or more devices, computational devices, serves as a pseudo-neuron for the skip. And given the scope of the modern-day internet and radio communications networks, the number of pseudo-neurons available has surpassed the capacity of the human brain by an order of magnitude. The skip currently maintains an unknown number of human-facing internet presences, primarily on darknet communities. So it's possible that Foundation agents have unwittingly made contact with the skip through its aliases. So we have this distributed intelligence that is able to infiltrate as though it were human onto darknet communities. It's all constructed in a plausible way, which is always the tough thing for me to get me immersed on these. And we go there, the next paragraph reads, as of 2024, so we're set in the near future, the skip is present on all information networks exposed to radio waves, including the entirety of the internet, secure internal government networks, and the Foundation intranet. And boy, that's bad news. I picked this because I wrote a while back, I never put it on the wiki, but I wrote a full sort of technical white paper on how the Foundation would build computers. And it would involve that none of the hardware would be, stuff you could purchase off the shelf, because anomalies would be more apt to be able to make it onto the Foundation network. In that way, you would, have your own architecture, you wouldn't use something like the Intel x86 instruction set. You would build your own instruction set and build your own silicon traces and all that shit. The problem with all of that is it would all be defeated by this work, unless you put every device in a Faraday cage. If you sort of the trouble with that, say you do that, you stick a frickin' Faraday cage around every computer that you put out there. The trouble with that is, one, the airflow becomes a son of a bitch, but also the networking stack. You still have to have inputs and outputs, and you can't really. You're going to be in trouble because you've got to have a copper line or some material that can facilitate communication. This says that it works, highly on copper, so maybe you do fiber lines. But if you didn't know about this at the time, well, you're hosed. And that's what I really dig about this, is this actually defeated my proposed method of how the Foundation runs shit. And that, to me, is really cool. What we have for the rest of this is a discussion on what we've observed from this skip. That on we have on relatively rare occasions, relatively rare has been struck through, and now it says on frequent occasions, a convergence of skip instances will cooperate to simultaneously broadcast near identical signals in phase, constructively interfering and boosting their signal strength to a level capable of being interpreted by commercial computer servers. And since the discovery of the skip in 2016, these collaboration events have increased in frequency and are estimated to occur, and this says tens of thousands, that's struck through, hundreds of thousands, that's also struck through, and now it reads up to 10 trillion times per day. That is, boy, that's bad news for everybody, I'm here to tell you. And what's really fascinating with this is that the entropy of these communications has improved over time. It started out to these transmissions were very poor quality and weren't usually coherent enough to be accepted by the internet at large as valid traffic. And we have more strike-throughs here that at first it was 1%, and then that struck through, 5% is struck through, 20% is struck through, 35% is struck through. 99.99% of these events produce coherent application layer high-level communications over a variety of protocols, including HTTP and SSH. So this distributed intelligence is learning, and it could be learning through its viral nature, that it has access to more of these neurons, and that's what leads it to be more and more successful. And where this gets concerning for the Foundation is that this thing could theoretically also be learning how the Foundation operates, and this is really well constructed from an IT perspective, from a networking perspective, using the right words in the right places, application layer, high-level communications. That's absolutely valid IT speak. We're talking about the OSI reference model, and that is exactly how the Foundation would portray it. Outstandingly done. In the August of 2022, classified internal reports in the Department of Defense indicated that a network terminal in the Pentagon was breached through a previously unknown exploit, and significant amounts of DoD data were accessed, consisting primarily of research and development of advanced spaceflight technology. And we performed signal analysis of the attack and indicated that it originated within our skip. It used a zero-day exploit that was purchased through a darknet hacking forum for the equivalent of $322,000 in Bitcoin. The wallet used for the purchase has been linked to a black boxed name, who is a prolific participant in darknet markets, particularly information security communities. Analysis of traffic to darknet servers compromised by the Foundation indicates that this black box is one of at least 31 aliases used by the skip, and that our skip, until recently, controlled at least $510 million in Bitcoin. Shortly after the DoD breach, a group of angel investors provided $500 million in seed funding to Starlight Enterprises, a privatized spaceflight company focused on long-shot development of interstellar colonization and the search for extraterrestrial life. These investments happen to coincide with the big sell-off of Bitcoin from wallets controlled by our skip, and entities linked to the skip currently hold a 51% stake in Starlight Enterprises. So this thing is intelligent enough to pull the strings to become able to control a spaceflight company and potentially move its effect outwards. We end this that in January 2023, the skip was detected on signals broadcast by the NASA Deep Space Network. In April 2024, the skip was observed in communication sent back from deep space probes, including the New Horizons interplanetary mission. Fate broadcasts from New Horizons continue to the present day despite a complete loss of contact with NASA and a declared end of the mission. As New Horizons is on a trajectory to depart the solar system, detection of the skip within the probe has become steadily more difficult as it approaches interstellar space. End article. This nails the scientific tone as well as anything I've read this year. Every single part of this is correct. Every single part of this is believable, and there's nothing in here that pulls me out of immersion even a little bit. absolutely, positively nailed the scientific tone and did it in what I consider to be one of the hardest areas. And everybody that is a subject matter expert in something is going to say that theirs is the hardest area. But when you start trying to do computer skips versus, let's say, a more biological thing, the trouble with computers is that they behave in a certain way. And if you send anomalous data, whatever that's going to mean in air quotes, through it, more often than not, the computer's not going to know what the hell to do with it. But we sidestep all of that by saying that's not really what we're doing. We've got any link between two or more computers is like a neuron in this artificial intelligence's, or I say artificial, this anomalous intelligence's brain. And that is something that you can do, and you don't have to get into the argument of how it works. It doesn't matter how it works, because that does not have to ride on any really existing protocols for it to work. So by doing that, they have really struck the balance, and that's what I loved about the last two works that I covered from Literally Mechanical. When they go after hard science, and in this case, IT, networking, modern computing, and even like the darknet markets, every part of this is valid, accurate. I love it. Very easy +1. And I haven't been doing a pick of the week thing, but for my, for what I get into and scratching my itch of IT work, this is my pick of the week. And with that, I am going to call it a wrap on week 9. I have failed to mention on a number of weeks running now that we do have a chat room for the SCP Cafe podcast. By all means, would like to see you around. I am going to be putting a link to a little embeddable chat widget on the scp.cafe website. You'll be able to hit it from the top bar. It'll say chat, and that will be something you can hit on your browser. And additionally, watch that space around this time next week. I'm going to do everything within my power to have the store at least up and running enough to get going around this time next week. Until then, see you for week 10 on Friday, and keep reading, keep writing. I'll see you on the other side.